Good morning, Dan and Amy, in our continuing series, Illinois congressional candidates, giving people the opportunity to make their case as the election nears. We talked to Mike Frissalone in Illinois' 3rd, Republican candidate, Will County board member.
We've had Jim Oberweis on.
Maybe if Frissalone, that would be it's really an interesting race in a very volatile year, because of the composition of that district and because his opponent is a communist. That would be Frissalone's opponent, Marie Newman, who defeated Dan Lipinski in a primary. That would really be something to establish a beachhead on the southwest side of Chicago Metro, the city and the suburbs. Also, reclaiming the suburbs. You mentioned Oberweis out Kane County way. And then a district, as we've mentioned before, as we've discussed before, that was held by Henry Hyde and Peter Roscom in combination for about the last 4 decades, that is now held by a nasty Marxist goof.
Well, his comments are, boorish. He's a pig. What he said about owning a rifle or owning a gun, you have a small, if you own one? What if you own 3?
Having a small penis is not a reason to own a gun. That's Sean Casten's position on gun ownership. That's what he said.
I know, but it's gross every time you bring it up.
And that's just the tip of the iceberg. We played excerpts from the first debate between Jeanne Ives and Sean Casten on Monday's show. And Jeanne Ives went chapter and verse on on Casten's tweeting, making the point to these sentimentalists in the suburbs, if you're uber offended by Trump's tweets, have you taken a look at how Sean Casten communicates, particularly in the direction of people with whom he disagrees? And then you're going to pretend that hate has no home here? You're going to pretend that you're somebody interested in elevating the civility of our discourse and so forth? You can't square support for Sean Casten with that position, was one of her points among many. For more on the status of this race, we're pleased to be joined by the aforesaid former state representative, now Republican candidate for Congress, Jeanne Ives. Jeanne, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
Well, good morning, Dan and Amy.
From the discussion we had on your BBM debate with Casten over the weekend, one of the questions that popped up from listeners is about something that you raised, but it really didn't get developed in the debate, and it was sort of an odd format because everybody was zooming into it, so it didn't have that natural exchange. But it's about Sean Casten's interest in biomass companies. It was touched upon, but people are looking for details. Can you connect the dots for us about this Sean Casten, who portrays himself as a scientist, as an engineer, and he's a proponent of some version of the Green New Deal? And you made the point that he has a financial interest in the policies he's promoting, and people wanted to understand that.
Okay, sure. No, it's really important to understand this because Sean Casten has said that CO2 is a pollutant. Now, every third grader knows that's not true. It's actually necessary for life, and especially plant life, and it's something that we exhale. So it's not a pollutant. But that said, if he wanted to he was concerned about CO2 and it becoming from 350 parts per million to over 400 parts per million, because he likes to talk in those types of terms, which is like, four parts per 10,000 people in a stadium, for example. So it's a very minuscule amount. And by the way, we've had far more CO2 in the atmosphere prior to this. So it changes, right? But if that was your big concern, then why are you invested in biomass? And he is personally invested in a biomass company called Greenleaf Power. And when you do that, you burn off, forestry products. And when you do that, you give off 1.5 times the amount of CO2 that coal does. So how can you be invested personally in a company that is burning energy that gives off more CO2 than coal, and then say that you want to get rid of coal and you're always concerned about CO2 in the environment? I mean, it just doesn't make sense. The guy's one walking hypocrite.
So the argument that you're making is that he is essentially trying to use Green New Deal policies to eliminate the competition for an industry for an industry he's invested in.
Yes, he's personally invested in it. Now here it gets worse. In March, when they were debating the first big $2.2 trillion COVID relief package that everybody felt was necessary to happen. Sean Casten is sitting up there. He's in the majority, by the way. I've never been in the majority. I've always had to work with the other side. He's sitting there in the majority. He's, a latchkey for Nancy Pelosi. And what does he ask for? He could have asked for anything. He could ask for a fair deal, made sure that Illinoisans got their fair share of COVID relief. He could have asked for money for businesses or the unemployed, but no. Sean Casten wrote a letter to Nancy Pelosi asking for renewable energy subsidies to be included in the COVID relief package. And quite possibly, those subsidies would have benefited the company that he is personally invested in. I mean, how does this guy get away with this?
Well,
and
he's
then have
not
a
here
straight
on this
face
show.
saying that he cares. Yeah.
But do you think your constituents are getting the message about him and what he's really about?
Oh, I definitely think so. I think a lot of them are tuned in to who Sean Casten is, and that's why we've had a lot of great momentum. Even in his hometown of Downers Grove, and especially in Hinsdale, man, we are just winning down there.
And you got
great.
the endorsement of the Chicago Tribune. Tell us about that.
Yeah, no, we're really proud about that endorsement because their questions really focused on the fiscal condition of the state. And probably the biggest question I was asked by the person interviewing me was, what are we going to do about Illinois? What do you think, sitting up there in Congress, that you can do to help Illinois? And I said, well, if you're thinking that we need to do some sort of Puerto Rico action where we have a state oversight committee or a federal oversight committee come in and run the state because it is bankrupt, I don't really want to necessarily go down that road because I believe in federalism. But, Mitch McConnell did say the B word. He said bankruptcy, and you had Don Harmon and all the Democrats down in Springfield tee up a bill asking for, or a letter asking for $42 billion in a bailout at the federal government level for the state of Illinois. I will not vote for that. These people have got to learn their lesson. Voters better wake up and vote in different politicians. You'll get a different result. But what I did say is at some point the free market is going to figure this out. I actually think that we have a little problem with our rating agencies. We trade like we're at junk. We should be at junk. And if we were at junk level for our credit rating, then you'd have a lot less ability to borrow money for the state, and then you would start to arrest some of the spending issues.
Yeah, to force decisions that people otherwise don't want to confront is essentially the point. I got an idea. How about we raise taxes? That's what has been suggested.
Yay.
So we should graduate the state income tax. I mean, it's only the top 3% that are going to be paying more. 97% of Illinoisans get tax relief. So it's just making the rich, the millionaires and billionaires, pay a little bit more. Everybody else gets relief, and now we're starting to really cook with fire.
This is absolutely another area where Sean Casten is a complete hypocrite. So he talks about our massive spending that we're going on, all the debt we're accumulated. And I point out to people, he voted for all of that. His first vote on a budget blew through the caps that were put in place by over $320 billion. His next vote, he specifically brought up the fact that we spent $1.4 trillion on a budget bill. Yeah, and you voted for that, Sean Casten. But his solution is higher taxes, and that's another place where he's a hypocrite, because he wants to give the wealthy people in the 6th Congressional District a tax break because he doesn't like the fact that their SALT deduction got capped, their state and local tax deduction got capped with the 2017 Tax Cut and Jobs Act. On the flip side, he's all in for the state progressive tax, which would actually harm those wealthy individuals. He can't figure out where he wants to be on tax policy, but always more taxes is better. Repeal the 2017 tax cut, which saved people in this district $166 million was saved by the people in this district alone. And by the way, the 6th Congressional District has the highest income output out of any other congressional district in the state of Illinois. And in fact, we produce nearly $45 billion in income, which is greater than the GDP of Wyoming and Vermont. I mean, so we should have a big booming voice on national policy for the federal government, and we don't.
It's a Potomac two-step for Casten right here. I'm going to provide you relief at the federal level. My friends are going to increase your taxes at the local level. It's just classic. And so on that SALT deduction cap that hits so many, because, of course, you get to $10,000 in Illinois taxes real quick. A lot of people do. But it's sort of forcing hard decisions. Hey, look, Casten and his mates are the ones who have you bumping up against the cap, by mid-February. That's a state and local problem. Don't blame the federal government, and don't ask Wyoming and Vermont and every other state to subsidize terrible public policy at the local and state level in Illinois. You want more runway before you hit the cap for the SALT deduction? Then deal with what's going on locally and in your state.
That's absolutely right. It is a state and local problem that we have high property taxes, the highest in the nation, and certainly this district pays some of the highest because Lake County has the highest amount, and this district includes portions of Lake County. But it's even worse than that. Look, the Tax Cut and Jobs Act. I mean, honestly, it really did cut taxes for 90% of the Illinois families that live in the district. And so it was a good overall. It was a great measure. Not to mention it simplified the taxes on people. And let's be honest, a lot of people weren't getting their full SALT deduction anyway because they were getting caught up in that other tax, that alternative minimum tax, which went away. And in fact, in this district, over 33,000 people used to get hit by AMT, and now only 1,180 get hit. So a lot of them were already not getting their full SALT deduction to begin with.
I'm sure you've.
But people don't care about details, unfortunately. They just don't seem to care to think about the details or the hypocrisy of people like Sean Casten, and I find that just infuriating.
Yeah, and what finds a lot of your constituents infuriating, people that are going to be voting for you, is all your campaign signs that have been vandalized. Has anyone been arrested for that? Because I know that you've posted it and other people have posted it, and I thought it was disgusting.
No, yeah. It is disgusting. His team they don't respect women, actually, and Sean Casten doesn't respect women because anybody who is a middle-aged man like him tweets out a Cardi B pornographic video. I mean, it makes no sense.
Well, he is in the music industry. He's a well-known rapper. So.
Oh, really?
So maybe that's why it was just a professional courtesy from Sean Casten, given his rap career. Maybe no. So much of this is bound up in character and tenor. First, start with how Casten is going at you, at least from the commercials I've seen. Basically, he's saying Jeanne Ives is Donald Trump.
Yeah, I'm not Donald Trump. And in fact, Sean Casten is more like Donald Trump when you look at his Twitter feed than anybody. I mean,
but there he is in front of an ambulance saying you don't care about COVID and all that. I mean, it's just a crazy campaign.
That's ridiculous. Look, we all care about COVID. We know it's real. It's just his solution is like Pritzker's solution: keep the kids at home, keep everybody locked down, and make sure that the productive people have to pay for everybody else who's not working, and keep these businesses closed. And I was just with a handful of business owners. They have no idea how they're going to survive the winter. Some of these folks are restaurant owners. You've got the Department of Health. One guy told me, literally coming in there multiple times because people are falsely accusing him of not following the rules and trying to shut down his ice rink for kids. I mean, this is silliness at this point. We can't afford the shutdowns anymore, and we can safely reopen because our medical system has figured this out. They know a lot more than we knew 6 months ago. And what we do know is that, let's be honest, Sean Casten, kids are not that susceptible to the COVID issue. Unfortunately, I think 7 kids have died in the state of Illinois under the age of 20, but there are over 2 million kids that need to be in school.
But they all had comorbidities too. And Jeanne, as a coach, how important it is for kids to get out from the basement and exercise and socialize with other children. This is torture what we're doing to our kids.
Absolutely. Drug overdoses are up in this county. Suicide attempts are up, everything. It's all bad.
Do you get the sense, since you're out and about more than most, that there is a bit of a revolt bubbling below the surface? We've seen some evidence of this, people challenging the school boards in unusual places, unusual people to be doing it in unusual places like New Trier. And I just wonder if parents and families, even if they're not Trump supporters, even if they're not Jeanne Ives supporters, there's evidence that they're getting fed up with what they're being fed from their local officials.
Yes, I definitely feel that especially the school closures have brought unusual groups of people together to understand what big government looks like.
Mm-hmm.
And, I think it's also encouraging to hear that other people are now starting to think about those spring elections for school board, and they're interested in running.
Hmm.
So this COVID, in some respects actually showed you exactly what big government looks like. They get to make all the decisions. You get no input on those decisions.
And
That's no way to run a country.
Yeah, they have more control over your children than you do.
just
Hmm.
just going back to Sean Casten, because people who have lives don't probably follow his Twitter feed, and maybe don't know about just how antagonistic he is, just how low rent he really is with his rhetoric, and uh, and he masks it as he did in that debate I listened to on BBM over the weekend. He tries to be Mr. Reasonable when he's in a public setting like that, when he feels comfortable, whether from behind his computer on Twitter or in a Zoom call with to supporters, then he shows you who he really is. And so just tell people a little bit about some of what you recounted in the debate about who he really is and how he really treats people with whom he disagrees on the merits, like, say, Dan Crenshaw.
Yeah, no, it's very interesting. Last September, they had a bill that was going through Congress, and Dan Crenshaw vehemently disagreed with it. He put an amendment on it, and Sean Casten's response was to call Dan Crenshaw, who is a Navy SEAL, a combat war veteran who lost a life in combat, lost an eye in combat. He called him a racist. This is exactly what all the Democrats do. They call you a name when they disagree on policy. He said that what the voters think does not matter. He said that bipartisanship is overrated. I'm serious. When Ruth Bader Ginsburg died, the first tweet coming out of Sean Casten just a minutes after the announcement was, "Don't you blanking dare Mitch." And then he went on to attack Lindsey Graham, who's the chairman of the Senate Judiciary Committee, and said that he's a cowardly bootlicker and a doofus. And then he said that Mitch McConnell is a sniveling sack of hatred. Who says these things to begin with? Who even tweets, let alone a congressman? It's no wonder Sean Casten has gotten no legislation passed at all. Zero, zippo, nothing.
Authored no bills, huh?
Hey, man, it just
Right,
sounds like he's
no.
auditioning for a spot on MSNBC. So, Jeannie, give us the closing argument. The choice. Frame the choice for us come November 3rd. With early voting come right now, but you know what I'm saying.
Well, look, you're going to vote for somebody who really wants to represent you, and I do care about it. The best legislation I passed came from the constituents that I serve down in Springfield because I listen to them. It doesn't matter what party they are. People have good ideas, and I'll support them. And but I support the free economy, the rule of law, by the way, restoring law and order, by the way. And Sean Casten just doesn't. If you want more government and higher taxes, then I'm not your candidate. But I tell you what, this job is too important to just leave to feckless politicians like Sean Casten, who don't care about local control, who's never served locally. As far as we can tell, he's never volunteered for anything. He's not really a community member. He is a figment of big government. He just got pushed into this job. He doesn't really care about the outcome of policy, and I actually do. Why? Because I served in Springfield, and I know who these politicians are that are making decisions on your life, and they are very cavalier about it. And I actually really do care to get the right policy across to improve people's lives and livelihoods.
She is West Point grad, former state representative, Jeanne Ives, GOP congressional nominee in the 6th District.